Hello and welcome to River 6 Media. It's that time of the month again. It's time for the monthly book review, and for this month we are reviewing The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch. I'm surprised I actually got through that without stumbling over the words. Really good book. I have never read this author before, so I was a little bit hesitant about reading it. But I enjoyed it. It had a very good mixture of backstory, current story, and foreshadowing. Some chapters, you'll read some chapters, or I think they call them interludes within a chapter, that will be talking or painting a picture of something, and you won't find out what that pertains to until the next chapter or a couple chapters later. That I enjoy that in books if everything ties together in the end. It was a little bit slow-paced, but not so slow that it was boring. That was mostly at the beginning of the book when they're setting up everything. But halfway through the book, everything started to pick up. Like, you knew the characters, you knew the backstory of the characters. The action scenes were described well enough that your imagination could fill in the blanks. So that's what I really enjoyed about it. I especially like the fight scenes with the one character. I think his name is Gene Tannen. I really enjoyed those scenes. So the front of the book, it's pretty interesting. So you've got this is supposed to be the main setting of the story. It takes place in a city called Kabor, and I'm guessing that is supposed to be the figure of Locke. I love this, I guess, pirate style lettering on the back. It's pretty basic. It's just the story. There are other books in the series. I do have the other books. I do plan on continuing to read this series and finding out what the whole story is, and maybe I'll do a review after the whole series comes out. I believe there's these three, and I think there's a fourth and maybe a fifth planned. But yeah, if you haven't read The Lies of Locke Lamora, if you haven't read this series, if you haven't read this author, highly recommend picking him up. He writes in such a way that it's not necessarily like a page turner, like you're gonna have it done in a week. Some of you might. I didn't. It took me longer, but that's because I had other stuff going on. But yeah, I highly recommend this book. It's fantasy, but there's not a lot of magic in it. There's only one magic user in it, and it's pretty interesting how they dealt with him in the book. Yeah, it's something called a bonds mage. You don't really know much about them in this book. They might get into it in the later books. I'm not sure, but yeah, like I highly recommend picking at least this series up, at least this book up by Scott Lynch. So, and as always, if there's any books that you guys want me to review, leave a comment down below. I'll be sure to either check to see if it's in my collection or backlog if we want to get technical. If I don't have it, I will make a point of looking into getting it. And yeah, so that is The Lies of Locke Lamora. Highly recommended. Definitely worth a read. Definitely worth picking up. And with that being said, we'll see you next month.